Well, hello there.
Hey,
How are
how are you?
And hello to all the glorious weirdos out there. And we got a great show tonight, Gwen. I mean, real versus
Your sound
real.
is a little off.
Okay. So,
Sorry, guys. Always gremlins on the show.
all right, let me try and go out, come back in.
Okay, you do that. Well, let's say, hey, Carol, I see you out there, and Rez, see you out there too. And hey, hon, Thomas is going to go out and come back in. But welcome to Profiled. Tom will be back in just a minute. And for you that didn't see the commercial, we're always promoting Connecticut Paracon. Tom, can you hear me?
I'm trying.
There you go. Hold on. Let me pull you back up. How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
No.
All right, let's try it again.
Do it again. That's fine. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when you have live. Hey, Sean, how are you? And I know we got some other people watching too, but we're going to talk about Connecticut for just a minute. He's got a really great show coming tonight, and hopefully this will work.
All right. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know. I just left for a second and then it got all screwy. But I'm not going to move my phone here too much. So I'll make sure I stay plugged in. So we won't flip it around. But yeah, really quickly, I don't want to waste too much time because we got a movie actor that's going to go along perfect with our talk today about real movie serial killers and killers and the real life people that inspire or that are after that. So I'm excited about it. And I'm also excited about our upcoming Connecticut Paracon coming up July 11th. That's going to be huge in North Haven, Connecticut. Also, the Connecticut Witch and Culture Festival, August 8th and 9th in Hartford. And also, I know a lot of people have been asking, but yes, Salem Paracon will be going on again this year at Salem State University in the South Campus.
Your sound's going out again.
November 14th.
Yeah, it's going out again.
Okay. How about now?
It's still going out on you. It sounds like it's really low.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay. Is that better?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just going to plug my microphone here. It seemed to be working. All right. We good?
Yes, I can hear you good now.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. So that's the stuff that happens. But let's do this. Let's get down to it. I don't want to waste too much time because I want to bring out our special guest as soon as possible in the last segment here. But again, everybody, let's zoom in and uncover the criminal mind. All right. So tonight we're talking about real versus real, and that is the movie serial killers and killers compared to real life. So movie killers are typically dramatized as hyper intelligent, supernatural or theatrical masterminds driven by a single grandiose signature. In contrast, real-life serial killers are predominantly ordinary, disorganized, and impulsive opportunists, while cinema focuses on spectacles. Reality is rooted in psychological trauma, antisocial personality disorders, and are blending seamlessly into society. Understanding how these profiles stack up against one another, let's highlight the gaps between Hollywood myth and forensic reality. So intelligence in masterminds, like movies like Hannibal Lecter or Seven's John Doe, are portrayed as brilliant puppet masters, leaving complex riddles and executing flawless, highly sophisticated plans. Actually, the real life is most serial killers have an average to below intelligence. The crimes are rarely sophisticated. Instead, they rely on stalking vulnerable victims in isolated areas or using basic manipulation. So there's also social status and appearance. So in the movies, we talk about as Hollywood often relies on the loner in a creepy mansion trope. or heavily disfigured mass killers like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees to instantly signify evil. But in real life, most notorious offenders are adept in hiding their dark impulses behind a normal, everyday facade. They are often employed, have families, and are trusted members of their communities. So the motivation and logic. Most cinematic killers are driven by philosophical motives and convoluted rituals or grand theatrical designs. Actually, in real life, forensic psychologists note that the real killings are overwhelmingly motivated by much basic desires: power, control, sexual gratification, or a pursuit of a sudden adrenaline high. So a lot of these influences and all that, especially with Ed Gein. We'll get into more of Ed Gein later, but really this is probably the most iconic Hollywood serial killer inspiration. In real life, Gein, the Plainfield Ghoul, the crimes of his grave robber and murder in the 1950s heavily influenced the creation of these well-known cinematic tropes, which is like Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who wore a mask made of his victim's skin and exhumed corpses. Norman Bates of Psycho, who inspired by Gein's toxic codependent relationship with his mother, a mommy's boy, and also Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, who shared Gein's macabre fascination with creating bodysuits from human skin. But let's get into some of the real horror ones. May not transpose into real life serial killers, but their personas are based off of a lot of traumas that we grow up with, especially people that write these movies and their traumas from life they bring into it, like people like Stephen King. And of course, one of the masters, Wes Craven, which we'll talk about here. But unlike the horror icons like Leatherface or Ghostface, who were heavily modeled after specific real-world serial killers like Ed Gein and Danny Rolling, Freddy Krueger wasn't inspired by a single real-world serial killer. Instead, Wes Craven pieced Freddy together from a fascinating mix of real-world medical anomalies, a creepy childhood encounter, and a psychological trauma from local news headlines. But there's a true story, or the true anatomy that inspired is the Springwood slasher. So the core premise of and all that is the sudden unexplained death syndrome, which is part of the story. The idea of a killer hunting people in their sleep really came from a series of bizarre, tragic medical articles in the Los Angeles Times during the late 70s and early 80s. Craven read about a young, healthy Southeast Asian refugees, mostly from Hmong ethnic group, who had fled to the U.S. to escape the horrors of the Cambodian genocide and war. Several of these young men became terrified of falling asleep, telling their families that a powerful ancient entity was chasing them in their nightmares. But the reality is, to stay awake, they drank massive amounts of coffee and hid sleeping pills. And eventually, exhaustion won. When they finally fell asleep, they screamed in terror, thrashed about, and died mid-nightmare. No medical explanation. Autopsy showed no physical cause of death. The medicine eventually labeled this SUDS, or sudden unexplained death syndrome, a genetic cardiac arrhythmia triggered by extreme stress, sleep deprivation, and nocturnal terrors. Craven took this real-world terror and asked, what if the thing chasing them was real? So he ran with that to create Freddy also. But a lot of it comes from Wes Craven's childhood. He had the identity. Fred Miller was a childhood memory of Wes Craven's. The name of the kid Craven was relentlessly bullied by in a neighborhood, a schoolmate named Fred Krueger. When it came to the name, his ultimate cinematic monster, he chose his childhood tormentor's name, the kid that beat up on him. That's crazy. Talking about recognizing and putting your trauma out there, naming your most famous character after. But when Craven was roughly 11 years old, he was looking out his apartment window late at night. A disheveled, unhoused man in a fedora hat walked up on his sidewalk below. The man stopped, turned, and looked directly up into Craven's eyes with a malicious, mocking grin. He then walked into the building's hallway just to terrify the young boy. That pure, irrational fear of an older man watching from the dark became Freddy's physical blueprint, that fedora hat. So it had to come from somewhere. So, and another part of it is there was a local molestation case So while Freddy was famously written as a child killer in the final 1984 film and later shifted to a child molester in the 2010 remake, Craven's original script was heavily influenced by a string of disturbing child abuse and molestation cases, making local headlines in San Diego and Los Angeles during the early 1980s. So Craven wanted Freddy to represent the ultimate societal taboo, the monster next door who corrupts and destroys innocence from within a peaceful suburban neighborhood. But there's also evolutionary science behind this, especially when they're developing Freddy's persona. So if you look at the sweater, Craven read a Scientific American that the human eye has difficulty processing the juxtaposition of specific shades of red and green side by side. It is visually jarring to the retina. He chose these exact colors for Freddy's striped sweater to make the character naturally uncomfortable to look at. The glove, Craven wanted to avoid standard horror weapons like axes or knives. So he looked at nature and realized the most primal fear hardwired in the human DNA is the threat of being killed by a claw of an animal. So he designed the glove to mimic a bear or tiger claw, utilizing old school hardware, store materials like plumbing pipes and steak knives to give it a gritty industrial feel. So that's kind of where he came up with this, really putting a lot of thought into it. But, you know, there's also the inspiration of real killers inspiring slasher films. So such as the killers inspired Jason Voorhees, or similar cases. While Jason Voorhees is primarily a product of fiction crafted by screenwriter Victor Miller to serve as a tragic motivation for his mother in the original Friday the 13th, 1980, the slasher at a summer camp trope and the specific behaviors associated with Jason heavily mirror real-world cases. The parallels break down into three categories: cases that directly shape the film's backdrop, killers who share Jason's physical or stylistic hallmarks, and real-world campground homicides. So there was a case back in 1960 at Lake Bottom Murders. Though Victor Miller has stated he didn't intentionally copy a specific killer, the real-world event that most closely mirrors the exact setup of Crystal Lake occurred 20 years prior in Finland. So on June 5th, 1960, 4 teenagers were camping on the shores of Lake Bottom. Between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., an unknown assailant attacked them through the fabric of their tent using a knife and a blunt object. The victims, 3 were killed, 1 survived with severe facial fractures. So the parallel there is the setting, an isolated lake resort, the vulnerability of teenage campers, and the sudden brutal nature of the bludgeoning stabbing attacks are identical to the formula used in Friday the 13th. The case remains officially unsolved, leaving an enigmatic, faceless specter attached to the location, much like the legend of Jason. So there's other archetypes there. Several high-profile American cases cemented the public fear of isolated campgrounds, woodland predators, directly influencing cultural anxieties. The film exploited that. There was a case, the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders, 1977. 3 young girls were murdered in their tents at a summer camp. The camp was permanently closed immediately after, creating a real-life camp blood legacy where once joyful summer destination became a permanent monument to trauma. And probably one of the closest things to Jason Voorhees' storyline would probably be the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, just because of what the killer wore. So Texas-Arkansas border, 1946, was orchestrated by an unidentified killer known as the Phantom Killer. These attacks targeted young couples in isolated Lover's Lane. The Phantom wore a burlap sack over his head with the eye holes cut out. The exact visual design later used for Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th Part 2, 1981, before he acquired his iconic hockey mask. So that's pretty crazy. But let's look at some of the biological narrative at Geen with Jason Voorhees. So there's that first film where we look into 1980. The film is a maternal devotion and severe psychosis. Pamela Voorhees kills out of grief for her son, hearing his voice, commanding her to act. Gein's entire criminal pathology was rooted in an extreme fracture relationship with his deceased mother, Augusta. The cinematic concept of the killer operating from a dilapidated wooden shack in the woods, surrounded by makeshift shrines and driven by a warped parental dynamic, stems directly from the police discoveries at Gein's Plainville, Wisconsin farm in 1957. So you do have that mother-son correlation killer going on there with into Jason Voorhees. But let's get into Ed Gein a little bit more, and some of the other characters that were inspired by Gein, and some of the other movie characters too. But perhaps there's no individual has impact the horror genre, of course, than Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. He was arrested in Wisconsin, 1957. Gein was technically a murderer convicted of 2 killings and a prolific grave robber. There is talk that he might have set his own brother up because his brother was saying supposed terrible things about his mother, trying to get him to wake up and get out and live life. And there was also a mysterious fire, and they found Gein's brother dead amongst this fire. So there's potentially, after Gein was captured, that he could have been part of that, but nothing could be proved. If it was, it would definitely make him the 3 killings, making him a serial killer. But his obsession with the deceased, deeply religious mother, and his practice of fashioning trophies and garments from human skin birthed 3 of cinema's greatest titans. Norman Bates of Psycho. So Ed Gein author Robert Bloch lived just 35 miles from Plainfield when Gein was arrested. The intense, unhealthy psychological codependency with his dominant mother, her post-mortem preservation, and the fractured identity psychosis directly mirror Gein's reality. So that was a big one of the first. And then, of course, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the character of Leatherface. While the chainsaw in the rural Texas setting were fictionalized by Tobe Hooper, Leatherface's signature mask made of human skin and the macabre furniture inside the farmhouse was directly lifted from the gruesome discoveries made at Gein's property. Then, of course, Buffalo Bill, Silence of the Lambs. So Ed Gein and others, Gum's core desire to construct a woman's suit to transform into his mother is pure Gein. However, Thomas Harris constructed Buffalo Bill as a composite killer, pulling traits from several other real monsters. So let's put all those together. The character of James Gum from Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill. So what we have to look at is when we really get deep into what Thomas Harris wrote here. So let's look at it. Buffalo Bill. So beyond Ed Gein, Harris and screenwriter Ted Talley utilized the specific MO of 4 other notorious serial killers to flesh out James Gum. Ted Bundy. So we know in the movie, Gum used a fake plaster cast on his arm to appear injured and helpless, tricking Catherine Martin into helping him load a couch into his van. This was Bundy's exact signature ruse for luring young women. Gary Heidnik. Gum traps his victims in a deep, dark pit in the basement, holding them captive. Heidnik famously kidnapped 6 women and held them in a literal dungeon pit beneath his Philadelphia home. The other part, Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. Gum's history of killing his grandparents as a teenager to see what it felt like mirrors the opening chapter of the co-ed killer's criminal trajectory. And then we have Dennis Rader, BTK killer. The cold, calculating stalker mythology and elements of sexual deviance, fetishism, parallel aspects of BTK killer's profile, which was actively being studied during the novel's development. Crazy. But, the biggest character of all in Silence of the Lambs we have to compare, of course, is Hannibal Lecter. And that's a big one. And when Harris really, back when he was doing character references and all that to write books, there was a time he went down to this Mexican type prison to interview somebody. He ended up being met by a doctor, Dr. Alfredo Bali Trevino, not knowing he was a prisoner at this prison, but he was the doctor helping out and help people that came in. But Thomas Harris revealed that the primary inspiration for Lecter's clinical coolness and high intelligence came from this guy. And the medical background was the physician that he met in Nouveau Leon prison in the 60s. Trevino had murdered and meticulously dismembered his lover. Crazy. But we also know Hannibal Lecter was a cannibal, stemming from probably the inspirations behind that Albert Fish, Jeffrey Dahmer, probably more Albert Fish at the time, considering Dahmer was a little later around that time. I think Harris was writing that, but it could be part of it. Lecter's refined cannibalism echoes the extreme psychopathology of Albert Fish, the Gray Man, and the cannibalistic compulsions of Dahmer. Though Lecter possesses an elite aristocratic sophistication that contrasts with their chaotic realities, Chianti and fava beans, what's more sophisticated than that? So, but that's crazy. Another thing I want to throw in is you really look at his character reference. There's also part of it that was really intriguing is Ted Bundy. Now, a lot of people don't know when Bundy was in prison, he committed most of his crimes in Washington. Of course, he was captured in Florida. But when he was in prison, there was another killer, nicknamed the Green River Killer out in Washington, which we later found out is Gary Ridgway. But Bundy assisted the FBI with his own information, doing his own profile. And a lot of the interviews with Bundy about this were by famed profiler John Douglas, Dave Ruckert, and of course, Robert Keppel, who was primary on Gary Ridgway. And they came about the point that Hannibal Lecter, of course, helped Clarice Starling to find Buffalo Bill in that similar fashion. But really want to go into is now really the characters in the movies and who inspired them. That's always the big one where they come about, like the direct inspirations. Of course, Ghostface in the Scream movies in 1996. A lot of people don't know this, but the inspiration was Danny Rawling, the Gainesville Ripper. The screenwriter of Scream was actually Kevin Williamson. He penned the script after watching a news broadcast about Rawling, who terrorized a Florida college town in 1990 by breaking in to the students' apartments, murdering 5 people, and staging the bodies in a theatrical, high-shock manner. So that's a direct inspiration. Another direct inspiration, Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. That was Ted Bundy, of course. Author Bret Easton Ellis heavily integrated Bundy's superficial charm, narcissistic psychopathy, and the ability to blend seamlessly into high society environments into Bateman's persona, proving that the most dangerous monsters often look like the elite. Now, this is the other big one here. I don't know if he directly was inspired, but sometimes any of us, we could be watching the news and something triggers our inspiration, directly or indirectly. But Pennywise, Stephen King's It, at the time, I know Gacy was finally captured for his crimes in 1978. And King began to write It in 1981, and it took him through 1985, finally published in 86. But John Wayne Gacy, while Pennywise is an ancient cosmic entity, Stephen King drew heavily, I think, from Gacy's real-life alter ego, Pogo the Clown. Gacy used his community standing and clown persona to disarm the public while hiding the bodies of 33 young men beneath his floorboards. That's crazy. Another big Stephen King character, Annie Wilkes in Misery. That's a big persona you really could choose from, but I know King went directly with Jenny Jones, the Angel of Death. This is the terrifying concept of a caretaker turned killer, inspired by real-life medical serial killers, specifically Jones that I just mentioned. It's a pediatric nurse suspected of killing up to 60 infants by deliberately inducing medical crisis, which is a lot. There's a lot of different people that fit that caretaker mentality killer over the years. But some of my favorites, some of you may have seen some of these movies, but one of my favorite, of course, is with Kevin Costner and Mr. Brooks. So if you guys have ever seen it, haven't seen it, make sure you go see this. He's a fictional killer they called the thumbprint killer. His name was Earl Brooks, of course, played by Kevin Costner. He was most, closely compared and inspired by Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, the bind, torture, and kill. While the film was originally a psychological thriller, not a direct biopic, the parallels between Brooks' character and Rader are striking. An upstanding family man facade, just like Earl Brooks, who was a successful businessman, philanthropist, and man of the year. Dennis Rader hid behind a perfectly normal, respectable life. Rader was a family man, a married father of two, a Boy Scout leader, and the president of his local church and council, very recognized in his community, just like Earl Brooks, the Kevin Costner's character. There's also the similarity between the addiction and hiatus in the movie. Brooks views his urge to kill as an addiction and goes through a long period of sobriety where he stops killing, attending 12-step style meetings to suppress his desires. Similar, Rader had a notorious decade-long hiatus where he managed to suppress his active urges before his eventual capture. There was a lot with the meticulous planning for both of them. Both killers utilize a highly controlled, methodical approach to selecting, stalking, and profiling their victims, taking extreme care to clean up crime scenes and evade forensic detection for years. So additionally, the film's subplot involved Brooks' daughter, Jane, in the movie, dropping out of college and committing a murder that her father recognizes as a manifestation of his own dark genetics. Heavily echoes the real-life trauma and the public fascination, of course, surrounding Dennis Rader's actual daughter, Carrie Rawson, who has spoken extensively about the psychological horror of discovering her father's secret identity. All right. Another big one of my favorites, a lot of people may not have seen this, but this is still considered, I think, the first direct movie about a serial killer in our cinema. The movie was called M, and Peter Lorre famously plays Hans Becker, a pathetic, compulsive child killer who is pursued simultaneously by police in the criminal underworld. Becker famously screams during his makeshift underworld trial that he has no choice, and internal fire forces him to do it. So there's a lot of comparisons to Peter Curtin. Fritz Lang heavily drew from the contemporary German true crime while writing M, specifically the case of Curtin, known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf. Curtin terrorized Germany between 29 and 30. The psychological parallel, like Becker, Curtin was driven by an overwhelming sadistic internal compulsion. His experience intense psychological and physical release from the act of violence itself, rather than a grand physiological plan. He had a social chaos. The movie M brilliantly captures how a single elusive killer can completely paralyze a city, turning citizens against one another and forcing law enforcement to tighten its grip so fiercely that even irregular organized crime syndicates cannot operate normally. This mirrored Dusseldorf during Curtin's reign of terror. Some of the other influences, Lang also pulled elements from Fritz Hammern, the Butcher of Hanover, who likely otherwise targeted use and triggered massive public panic just years before. But I want to add a story to M a lot of people may not know. I've talked about this a while ago on a Tuesday morning serial, the little clips to do on TikTok. But there's Catherine Lorre, Peter Lorre's daughter. Of course, Peter Lorre playing the lead role in M, serial killer movie. So she was pulled over by the supposed police one night. And while they were asking her for her identification, they happened to peer in her car and they saw a picture of her sitting on the lap of Peter Lorre. And they asked, well, who's that? Well, that's my father. This spooked the supposed police, who are actually Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Bonanno, the Hillside Stranglers, because they saw her as a high-profile person that would bring too much intense scrutiny on them if they were captured, if they saw that she was missing. So they actually let her go. So when Catherine saw that they were captured, she realized she avoided death because of this. So that photograph sitting there with her famous father helped her in that situation. So that's a crazy, crazy thing. But unfortunately, Catherine didn't have a long life. She had diabetes and, of course, died at the age of 32. But that lore goes there about that occurrence. And like I've said before, directly or indirectly in your lifetime, you'll come into contact with 33 serial killers in your life, which is crazy. But with that story, we also have the psychological toll. This is kind of what I want to go into and talk about. We talk about all these comparison of serial killers, the psychology of it, what inspired to make these roles, vice versa. A serial killer inspired that, or a movie role inspired. I know there was a serial killer that was inspired by Jason Voorhees and actually dressed in black and ran around with machete killing people. So it goes like both ways. But really what it comes down to is when actors play these roles, what happens to them psychologically after the role is over? I want to go on with a few famous cases. And then after I go through a few of these, and we'll have a little question and answer with our celebrity guest, and we'll do that in a few minutes here. But inhabiting the dark psyche of a serial killer can leave a heavy emotional residue. For actors who use deep immersion or method acting techniques, separating their own identity from a real-world monster often takes a severe psychological toll. So several prominent actors and actresses have spoken openly about the nightmares, anxiety, and deep depression episodes they experienced are stepping into these roles. First off, Charlize Theron in the movie Monster in 2003, which she was fantastic in the movie. She played Eileen Wuornos. The psychological toll that she said it played on her is beyond gaining 30 pounds and wearing altering prosthetics. Theron stayed in character between takes to sustain Wuornos's volatile, hypervigilant effect. She later revealed that the deep dive into Wuornos's intense trauma and fractured psyche pushed her to the brink of a profound depression, noting that she had to completely relearn how to be herself once production was wrapped. That's crazy. And then recently we had Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, played famously by Evan Peters. He was fantastic in that also. All these people were fantastic in their roles, but he played serial killer and cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer. So Peters spent months wearing Dahmer's wardrobe, weights on his arms to mimic his posture, and absorbing actual audio recordings and interviews of the killer. He described the process as hurting his soul, leading to severe emotional exhaustion. The role was so dark that Peters deliberately took a multi-year break from dark or psychopathic roles afterwards to recover his mental health. Another one of these roles, which is a very interesting one, some people may or may not know this movie, but Dominic West, Appropriate Adult, 2011. He played the infamous English serial killer Fred West. The psychological toll that this played was spent 3 weeks fully immersed in studying the brutal crimes committed at the House of Horrors in Gloucester. The brevity of the shoot did not shield him from its intensity. He reported suffering from reoccurring vivid nightmares where the real Fred West was trying to drag him down off a wall. The experience was so grim that he completely isolated himself from his own children for several weeks to avoid bringing the dark energy home. Oh, that's intense right there. One of my favorite roles, one of my favorite books, of course, written by John Douglas, who I talked about earlier, which stemmed the TV show Mindhunter, was Mindhunter the book. Of course, Edmund Kemper, famously played by Cameron Britton, who kind of looked just like him. Every character they had in that looked very similar to their killer counterparts. But the psychological toll Britton claimed to his chilling, calm portrayal, but admitted that Kemper's dark mindset lingered long after the camera stopped rolling. He noted that he had actively suppressed dark, intrusive impulses that began sprouting up in daily life, like when driving, stating that if you allow yourself to have dark thoughts all day, they dangerously become habitual. That's scary. Of course, Zac Efron extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile. He played the role of Ted Bundy. So Efron studied trial footage and stayed in a heightened state of isolation to capture Bundy's manipulative charm. He confessed that the boundaries between himself and the character blurred dangerously early in the production, saying it was scary how his own real-world mannerisms began to mirror Bundy's. He turned to transcendental meditation and spiritual cleansing rituals after filming just to shake the character's energy off. Another person that played Dahmer was, of course, Jeremy Renner. Of course, before his Marvel characters that he played, Renner took on the role of the Milwaukee Cannibal. He noted that diving into the isolation and madness of the character made his real life feel incredibly creepy and paranoid. The psychological residue kept him isolated and single for years as he struggled to shake off the defensive, unhinged aura required for the performance. Now, some of the more famous ones that we really talk about is the character, the Joker, where a lot of it was an emotional meat grinder for these two actors. Heath Ledger, of course, the most famous one, Joaquin Phoenix. So with Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight in 2008, for him to tap into the psychopathic, mass-murdering schizophrenic clown with zero empathy, Ledger famously locked himself away in a London hotel room for roughly a month. He kept an obsessive Joker diary filled with disturbing imagery, news clippings, and manic notes written in character. The intense psychological immersion combined with the relentless manic energy required on set severely disrupted his sleep patterns. Ledger openly admitted during production that he was averaging only 2 hours of sleep a night because his mind simply would not shut off, leading to a heavy reliance on prescription medication. And some people believe that that led ultimately to him dying at a young age. That's just a sad situation on that one. But another one was Joaquin Phoenix approached Arthur Fleck by undergoing a drastic rapid weight loss of over 50 pounds. He noted that starving his body to the degree fundamentally altered his psychological baseline, stating, as it turns out, that impacts your psychology and you really start to go mad when you lose that much weight in that amount of time. He spent months studying personality disorders and political assassins, resulting in the state of deep isolation, an emotionally raw mindset that took months of decompression to shake off after production wrapped. So there's also, the famous horror psychology of some of these horror protagonists, antagonists, any of those types of things. But we really want to look at The Shining. Shelley Duvall, her character, director Stanley Kubrick, deliberately isolated Duvall on set, forbade the crew from sympathizing with her, and forced her to perform grueling, terrified scenes over and over again, including the famous baseball bat scene, which reportedly took 127 takes. The psychological toll of crying, screaming, and staying in a state of acute panic for months caused Duvall's body to rebel. She suffered severe anxiety, physical illness, and her hair actually began falling out due to the sheer sustained trauma of the shoot. Another big one, Isabelle Adjani, Possession, 1981. In the psychological horror cult classic, Adjani plays a woman undergoing a violent, seemingly demonic breakdown. It was highlighted by a famous harrowing, visceral scene in the subway station, if you guys seen the movie. Adjani later revealed that the raw emotional exhaustion and dark psychological places she had to access for the role took years to recover from. She famously stated that she would never attempt a horror role like that again because of the lasting damage to her mental well-being. There's other characters that embody the cold, calculating evil. So stepping into the boots of real-world monsters or a ruthless antagonist requires a level of compartmentalization that can easily fail, leaving a heavy emotional residue. Michael B. Jordan in Black Panther, he played Eric Killmonger. Jordan intentionally isolated himself from friends, family, and normal social interactions to foster a deep, authentic sense of abandonment, anger, and pain. He wanted to truly understand the loneliness of character. However, once the film was wrapped, he found that he couldn't easily turn the dark, resentful mindset off. Jordan later revealed that he had to seek professional therapy to decompress, process the emotional weight, and safely find his way back to his normal self. And of course, famously, Bill Skarsgård playing Pennywise in It. The dancing clown required Skarsgård to tap deeply an unsettling, chaotic entity. He succeeded brilliantly, but the entity didn't leave when the cameras stopped. Skarsgård admitted that after filming concluded, he suffered from incredible, vivid, disturbing nightmares for months in which Pennywise was a separate entity haunting him, and he was actively fighting to separate his own identity from the monster. Crazy. But one of the crazy things in how our brain and these actors really get into these characters, some you may not think. The last one I want to talk about is Bob Hoskins in Who Framed Roger Rabbit from 1988. Well, of course, it's not a horror film, serial killer film, anything like that. But Hoskins' experience highlights a fascinating psychological phenomenon. To act alongside invisible animated characters, Hoskins trained his mind to hallucinate the cartoons in empty spaces for months. Afterwards, his brain couldn't stop doing it. He began seeing optical illusions and hallucinations in his everyday life, suffering a minor nervous breakdown that forced him to take a year-long hiatus from acting just to let his brain rewire itself back to reality. So the psychological toll of the method, when actors utilize prolonged immersion, starvation diets, intentional social isolation, and constant rumination of trauma, they force their nervous systems into chronic state of stress. The brain struggles to differentiate between a safely manufactured performance and an actual live psychological crisis. But who better to tell us about the effects of playing a character and what it does to them after they put the supposed mask down? What I want to do is Gwen will bring up some pictures of our guest. We'll be bringing out him in a few seconds. Let's just show the pictures who our celebrity guest is for today. My first guest ever on Profiled. So if Gwen is there we go. Mr. James Stokes, who famously played the character Jason Voorhees in Voorhees, Night of the Beast. There he is as Jason Voorhees. So without further ado, let's hear it from the man himself. Let's bring up Mr. James Stokes. Oh, he's got the mask on there, the mask of sanity. There you go, Jason Voorhees. Of course, I know he's in character because he's not going to talk, but now the mask is off. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Thomas. How are you, man?
Excellent, excellent. I hear you are not in Tennessee right now. You're having
I am not. I'm on the Oklahoma City border with Arkansas. I'm in Fort Smith, Arkansas for Fort Smith Comic-Con this weekend.
That's kind of strange that you are near Arkansas. I talked earlier, the Texarkana.
I know.
Supposedly inspired Jason Voorhees.
I know.
But what we were talking about is, I know you heard me talk about some of the inspiration indirect about Jason Voorhees. When you were trying to put your character together, what inspired you to get into character to begin with?
Well, listening to everything that you just said, some of it I knew, some of it I didn't know, and absolutely, it's so fascinating to listen to. Not just about the actors that played those characters, but the actual people themselves. You know, to walk through a mindset of an actual serial killer is absolutely, well, it's scary actually. And you know, to get in that mindset, I think you have to take yourself out of reality and put yourself into a state of just not being. It's a kind of an inner body or outer body experience. You know, getting to play Jason, you know, to set myself up. Okay, one, I'm restricted. You know, I'm in a suit that's so tight. I'm in a mask and prosthetics that are literally like glued to my face, and you can't breathe. You can't see very well. So that right there in itself puts you in a state of panic. And when you're in a state of panic, as you know, kind of like a caged dog or a caged animal, tiger, whatever. You go into a self-preservation mode to where you will do anything to get out. And so, I think as Jason, Jason, he kills everything that's in front of him. So it's like it's like he's in a constant state of just being cornered, and has to get out. And for me, in between sets, trying to breathe and get out of that state of panic was very hard. Sometimes before going into a scene, I would have to go out in the woods in the pitch dark, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Already can't hardly see, can't hardly breathe. You're sweating. And you get into this panic mode. And when you come out to when the director calls action, sometimes it's like, don't hurt nobody. You are just in a movie. You're not. So it's kind of like I can relate with a lot of those actors that get into that state that they can't get out of it. There was times where after I'm done and we've had a really terrible kill scene or something like that, it takes a while to get out of that. And you got to go off and be by yourself or meditate or or just do something to get your mind off of what you just did, because no, you really didn't do it, but when you in the moment it feels like you really did do it, and it looks like you did it, and it's like so yeah, I can totally agree and see where like Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix and all of those guys that played these characters can get into a sense of a mindset that they can't get out of without some professional help.
Yeah. Did you ever, during that time you were filming or even afterwards, like they talk about, some of them have vivid nightmares about?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No. And that's the thing, you go to bed and you think about the character that you play and see the mask, and it's almost like I couldn't look in the mirror when I had the mask on, because it was like, it's not me. I don't see James anymore. I see Jason. I see a grotesque individual that's out to kill people. And that's the kind of mindset I would get in. So I kind of stayed away from mirrors and stuff like that. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's like you kind of had to, because I didn't want to see myself in this light, and yeah, and I did have to talk to someone, after on set and all that stuff, and it's just to talk me down and to get my mind off and to take me somewhere else, So it was wild,
It is. It's funny that you say that, looking in the mirror. That's where your soul is. You don't want to get into that permanent disassociation, that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You're
Sure.
normal and you're playing a character, and that contrast. But I tell you, it's just crazy how that occurred to you. Any other characters that you played that maybe created that same kind of dread or panic or nightmares or anything like that had a hard time for you to get through?
Not per se the nightmares and stuff. Now I am getting ready to play another slasher in a film in Ohio, and it's called The Massacre, and I'm playing the killer, and that right there, it's a different type of killer. It's almost like a paranormal kind of thing, but not so. And I can't really explain that, and I don't want to give away a whole lot to it. But my character kills. That's how he stays alive. That's how he gets his energy. He gets his energy through the death of other people. And so, that's I don't want to go away. So I'm going to kill as many people as I can to get as strong as I possibly can. And that's what happens. And I keep getting stronger after every kill. And it's just, I think that's going to. I think that might psychologically do something to me. I hope not, but I think that it's going to be one of those films that's going to be kind of difficult to shoot sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. It's funny that you say that monster, almost slash serial killer type of persona. There was Richard Chase, the Sacramento vampire. His psychology was, schizophrenic, what they said he was, but he believed that his blood was turning to powder, and he had to feed off the blood of his victims to stay alive, just like you're talking about, to kill. Almost the same thing you're describing. So very closely related. I wonder if the guy that wrote the script for that had any influences and all that.
He never said that. I've never heard him say that, but I mean, I can see the similarities in that. So for sure.
Yeah.
So, but it's a lot to it, and you really have to have a good base with yourself and with families and friends and stuff to bring you down and to talk and to just get you out of that character.
Yeah, well, I know you have a good support system, and
I do. Yes,
Sammy's fantastic, and I could see her humor and laughing. So I don't think you could stay depressed or feel panicky for very long with your better half around and all that. And you too, my friend.
Right.
You're always a positive influence, especially even playing the character. And I talked a few weeks ago about our youth and the things to look out for in our children to help them navigate this world and avoid falling into the pitfall of those traumas, and eventually, hopefully, we don't want them to. We're trying to avoid that, become serial killers themselves. I know that you speak to a lot of these children. Can you tell us a little bit more about that mission?
Yes, my mission is it's pretty much well, besides the PTSD patients and stuff like that I go to, ex-vets and stuff like that, firefighters, police officers, stuff like that. I go to middle schools, and I chose middle schools for a specific reason. They're fixing to embark on the next chapter of their life going into high school. And going into high school, yes, it's 4 years that should be the best times of their life, growing as and pretty much becoming an adult. Well, you got to choose. There's two sets of friends. It's going to be the right set of friends and the wrong set of friends. And every school, everybody out there, they have that choice. And I try to talk to these kids before they go into the high school setting to sometimes you got to understand that it's okay to be alone. It's okay to take the path alone. It's okay to take the path that everybody else is not taking, because it's the right path for you. Just because all your friends are doing something doesn't mean that you have to do it. And they got to get that through their heads. And I literally see kids crying, saying already that they're choosing the wrong set of friends to go with. And it's finding a way out for them because peer pressure and bullying is so prominent in today's school. And sorry to say, but females are the number one. They've got the highest number of bullying out there. And I hate saying that, but it's statistically true. And so when you got these kids coming up to me and hugging me and saying, thank you, I am going to choose the right way. I want to make the right choices for me. I want to make my parents proud, my coaches proud. That's what I tell them all. Get into a sport. Get into something that's going to take your mind off schoolwork and going to drive you to do better. Getting into sports is one of the best things for high school athlete. A high school athlete is the best thing you can do because it does take your mind off of things and it gives you something to drive for, and it gives you something that's going to make your parents proud. It's going to make your coaches proud. You've got to maintain a certain GPA to play sports in high school. So it makes you almost choose the right set of friends, because more than most of the time, it's just like my football family. When I told my boys, hey, they always had my back, always, and they wanted to do the right thing, because we knew if we did something stupid, we're not going to get to play football that week. If we did something stupid over summer, we're going to pay for it on that football field. So we didn't. So I chose the right set of friends. So that's what I tell these kids. Get into something to help you along the way to where you make the right decisions. Choices is about everything. The choice that you make today determines your future for tomorrow. And you've got to understand that. if you make the wrong choices, your future is going to go downhill really, really quick. You make the right choices, you're going to stay on the right path, and you're eventually going to get to achieve any goal that you want. So that's what I try to tell them, and it really, really impacts them a lot. And I love that. I love to see their faces when I get to talking. And yes, I use my mask. I walk in there with my mask on or with my mask in my hand because they shut up. They shut up and they listen. You know, if I walked in there with a suit on, I look like another teacher. I look like another principal. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to do that. I tell them about my journey, about my life, to what I did. And I want them to see that if you choose the right things now, your future will be brighter, and it's everything's gonna just click for you, you know. And that I love doing that. It fires me up. I get very motivated. I get animated and all that stuff. And I do that in school too, because I think if the kids see me like that, they want to be that way too. And it just makes me very happy, you know.
Yeah, we all get into a situation where we're younger. Some of our friends might be questionable and all that, but there's still a learning experience from that. Of course, making the right decisions, like you said.
Sure.
It's funny, my core best of friends from childhood up through high school and all that, as we all became adults, there were 7 of us. All 7 of us became some form of law enforcement in our career, which is
cool.
Just so bizarre because we lost track. Some of them we lost track of each other after high school, and just looking back. And then the old Facebook comes out and you catch up and you say, oh my God, we all like have law enforcement in some way. It's that influence. It's finding the right crowd, the similar crowd, and you end up doing similar things. But it is the influence of life. Again, also the influence of your character that you played, even though you had the psychological effects, but the effect of that character to our youth and to people to learn from is another big thing too. And of course, we want a lot of people to learn about that because, James, you are coming to the event that I run with my partner, Charles, as the shaman and the showman, the Connecticut Paracon on July 11th. You'll be bringing the shindig, the mask, to take pictures with everybody. You know, we're excited to see you. What are you hoping for at the Paracon? What are you looking most forward to?
Man, I've never been to Connecticut, so getting to meet the fans up there that are fans of Jason and the fans of the franchise and all that stuff, to come to my table and to meet me and to see what kind of energy that I bring to the con. And I'm looking to meet new people and to build a whole new fan base up in Connecticut. Never been to Connecticut, so I'm so excited about being there. I just can't wait.
No, it's fantastic. I always love having you, my friend, and I know we've built a good friendship over the last little while here. And but I think the funniest thing is anybody watching. This is how great James is. My partner Stacia and I were working with an influencer group. Stacia had contacted them because she loved all their videos. It's taking my white friend to do black people stuff and taking my black friend to do white people stuff, the culture swap. And they wanted to do a ghost hunt. And so we took them to Haunted Hillview Manor. And of course, we can't just, do this willy-nilly. So we called James up and said, hey, buddy, can you come up? We want to pull a practical joke on these guys. And we had him come up, James dressed in his full outfit, all from the movie. We hit him in a certain part of Haunted Hillview Manor, waiting for the key word. And when the key word happened, he stepped out. And one of the young men there, Solo, was running so fast when he saw him. I think he became the #1 draft pick of the Cleveland Browns since
you ain't kidding.
Cleveland, like we are. Oh my
God! He was spraying holy water and feet flapping just as fast as he could go. Boy, it's funny. That was funny.
But the funniest part is true to character. James didn't run after him. He just took the long steps, didn't say a word, no talking and all that until, of course, he took his mask off. But oh my God, it was hysterical. I think it's still on All Access Network television. If you go back, the whole live is there. You can see the prank. And the great thing about it is we love helping, culture swap out. We want to do more stuff with them. But I think that little clip they did, I think it was like close to 2 million views now. And it was some fun to do that. It just helps Haunted Hillview Manor. Of course, they're trying to fix their roof. Unfortunately, a few days ago, a group of kids broke in and vandalized Haunted Hillview Manor. So now not only they have the roof, they also have to fix that stuff up. So go to www.hauntedhillviewmanor.com, donate what you can. We do have the Psychic Fair coming up there this weekend in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. And of course, James is coming to the Connecticut Paracon, and we're going to try and hopefully get him up to Salem Paracon also. We'll see how the schedule goes. That's going to be November 14th. But until then, let's bring Gwen back out. Let's see if our audience has some questions for us, James. Let's see if we can answer those. And
hey, guys.
What's up, my dear? Even Gwen's not even in her regular town. She's out there in Wisconsin right now.
I am. I have an event this weekend.
Traveling? So I came back from traveling just the other day, but I'll be headed back out this weekend, back out to Pennsylvania from Ohio here. But
yes, you will.
Guys are traveling. So, yeah.
We are. Anybody have any questions for Tom, James?
We can't hear you.
Anybody got anything? Can you hear? Uh-oh. Hold on.
I think I can hear
All right.
Glenn.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear. Wow.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
What I could do is if you
All
have
right,
any questions. I hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good. All right. Sorry. All right. Anybody have any questions for James or Tom?
Yeah. So if you do have any questions, and it's for James, and if you can't hear Gwen, then I'll make sure I give James the question. So, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can both of you guys hear me now?
I can hear you.
James, can you hear me? I'm gonna go back out and come in. But if anybody has a question, put it up.
James and I will keep talking, and but
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I remember Station I when we were traveling and all that. Like I said, how cool James is him and Sammy, his wife, and we got to meet up. We were traveling, and we decided to go see the guys. We went down to Florida for Christmas time and come back up. Got to see you guys in good old the Nashville area.
Nashville.
Yeah, it was great, and for us to share that because. Some people don't know, serial killers and I talk about and paranormal and all that, but I was actually a demo singer in Nashville back in the late 90s, early 2000s. We got to talk about that. But going back and seeing where you're at, how much it's changed. Every bar there is owned by some country singer or whatever. So
it seems like it. Yeah, it's a lot of it. Yeah.
But at least Tootsie's is still there. The old Mother Church is there. And so, but a lot of stuff is different. Some of the
I was at Third and Lindsay last night. We went there and we did a benefit to raise money for the Children's Hospital there at Bandy.
Yeah.
And did really well there. Got to meet Neil McCoy and be with my old buddy Mark Wills and I got to be up on stage with those guys and stuff, and that's is amazing, and it was kind of cool. So
yeah.
I love my time
doing that.
Yes.
Okay, good. We could hear you. So we'll see if there's any questions. But, in the meantime, we'll banter and see if anybody comes up with anything. Again, Connecticut Paracon, get your tickets. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So James will be there, has our Jason Voorhees, the newer one. We also have the original Ari Lehman's going to be there.
Ari Lehman,
yeah. He never wore the mask or anything like that. He was actually the young teenage coming out of the water at the end of the movie there. Basically starting the war. So that's cool. And his band's going to play first Jason. So that's like the after the event thing to do. But I know, I tell you, one of the craziest things is when James is in his Jason outfit, James is a big dude. He's 6'2", he's a big guy, but when he puts that thing on, he looks like he's 7 feet tall and so menacing.
He does.
Yeah, it's nuts. The full garb. Because when he came to Salem Paracon last year, it was more he had his T-shirt and put the mask on. But when that whole suit's on, man, it's just game over for
It is. It really
Yeah,
is. It's
and
amazing.
those poor kids that you scared the tar out of and all that. They couldn't
Love it.
believe.
Love
They said, "Oh, this guy's." They thought he was just dressed up. They didn't
Mhm.
realize he was the actual Jason Voorhees, and that freaked him out even more. And but it was great. So that was like a good time. But it just goes to show you a persona, a character, and all that, and how the reality of it, seeing it in real life, and knowing that sometimes those characters are based off of real life people.
Yeah.
We even go back, James. If you go back, and Gwen, you go way, way back before movies and stuff like that. There was lore stories told around the campfire.
Yes.
There was no serial killer talk or anything like that. A lot of these people that murdered in the dark and nobody knew, and of course they didn't have fingerprinting way back in the day and all that.
Right.
They didn't know what was happening. They considered it to be supernatural. So that's where a lot of people came up with the lore of werewolves. Werewolves could have actually just been serial killers at the time, taking
Sure.
people out. And, that's where a lot of our lore and our monsters come from, and that panic of it and the psychological turns that they take. And then, now we create movies off of real life people, but, and the effects that it takes. But a good horror movie really affects us psychologically, I think.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely.
It does.
That's what it does. I know the slasher killing and all that, but there's a psychological effect, especially in what you played on Friday the 13th, just that menacing sound,
Oh,
that he's coming, or whatever was used in your movie. But even with Jaws, the shark's coming. Then
hmm
a lot of people don't. You know what that is? It's a specific music, because we talked about Nashville and stuff like that, and a little bit of music.
Right.
You know me, I'm trying to put it all together as I say things all over the place. There is a
Right.
reason for it. Music, there is a movement that the church banned years and years and years ago. It's called the Devil's Triad. So it's a specific musical movement that gives that fear feel. That's where you get like a lot of heavy metal music, like Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath used the Devil's
Yeah.
Triad in a lot of their music. Of course, the little snippet of Jaws, the little snippet of Jason Voorhees is about to come out. It's all that triad and how it goes about, and it gives you that fear. You feel it in your bones and all that. Just music is a
Sure.
big thing with psychology too. Music makes a character also.
Absolutely, it does.
does.
Yep.
It's crazy. But
I mean, you think about it. If you watch a movie without the sound on, it's nowhere near as scary as it is with the music on.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
you got to set the scene. You set the stress of the character. He's around the corner
Yeah.
watching when you hear that.
That's
music.
exactly right.
It's like, how close are they, or when are they going to come? And and then unfortunately in real life, people get that feeling too. You're walking to your car, it's late at night, and there's only one light on. You automatically
Frequencies, that's
start
exactly
feeling, is
You do.
anybody watching me? Can I get to my car fast enough? It's
Yep.
going down in the basement at night or up in the attic, and just when people get that ultimate fear of built in the DNA, our fight or flight response, going
That's
way
exactly
back.
right.
Yeah. So that's what horror is about. That's why people, I think, are so enthralled with true crime, that psychological thriller type of stuff. But like Sammy said, the music gives the movie the vibe, no matter what kind of movie. Yeah, exactly.
does.
Yeah, you have happy music too to give a happy mood. It really does. Music in a movie sets the mood. And of course, we have our theme songs, the opening credits, ending credits, but it's that instrumental music in between or anything like that. Even Forrest Gump, all those famous songs from the era. When you're playing music from the era and all that, it really
That's right.
puts you on that time warp, like you're actually there, even though the movie was way past that time. That's another important thing, to play the right music, because you could really ruin a movie by playing music that doesn't fit that time and all that. So it doesn't give it that reality that we look for. But if they have any questions, Sammy, what you got here? Scary movie, kind of. Yeah, put some happy music into a scary movie. That would really bizarrely screw with people's psychology. I think she's onto something.
She is.
like a happy song going on when somebody's slashing somebody. That would just
Yeah.
really put you and just not know what to do with your mind. So that would be kind of funny. So, but again, you know, we'll kind of close out because I know you guys got a lot of stuff going on. You're traveling, and you know, I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. James, I appreciate you being my first guest on Profiled, especially with the important topic. You relate to it so much.
Mhm.
I always want to make sure that if anybody's on, they relate to that topic. And
I appreciate
you
that.
coming on.
Yeah.
And I can't
Absolutely.
wait to see
Thank
it.
you.
I can't wait
Can't
to
wait
see
to see
my
you too,
brother
man.
in Connecticut, and we'll talk again real soon, anyways, because we do try and talk as much as
May
we
have to
can.
get another lobster dinner.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to take it. We'll get a lobster roll. They're some of the best in Connecticut, but we'll do that. But Gwen, enjoy yourself out in Wisconsin.
I
Of
will.
course, James, Arkansas, have fun.
Thank you, guys.
Again, I know you guys all treat the families and the fans all really well. So do that. We'll talk soon. And again, we're at the end, and I'll see you next week. Let's go down the rabbit hole again.
Bye, guys.
Bye.